Hey y'all, I'm Laura with Hot Fan Media, and today we're going to be working on some common leak issues on this 2017 Jeep Cherokee. Let's get to it. It's important that you have a sunroof or you don't have a sunroof. Most of the time when you've got leaking, the sunroof is the first culprit. You want to go to the gutters, they're probably backed up, and that puts water into the cab. If you do have a sunroof, check that first. There are plenty of videos on sunroof leaks, especially for this vehicle, but this vehicle does not have a sunroof, so that's not the issue here. In the forums that I've read, it sounds like people are going to the dealerships and the dealerships are telling them one of a few things. You left your window down, and they're like, no, I'm not leaving my window down. Two, that they know it's leaking, but they don't know where it's leaking from and they can't really help you. Or that they fixed it and then the leak is still happening, and then they're like, well, we can't help. Only in like 1 or 2 cases that I read, the person was like, they did fix it. They said it was a body seam. So in this video, we'll be covering 3 body seam issues and 2 technical service bulletins that detail issues with water coming into the inside of the cab. The bright side is that these leaks are identical on both sides of the vehicle. You can see where I took the tear down and went way up to where the leak was coming into the vehicle, that there are water tracks. They're dark and black and ugly. And you can tell that it's definitely the same on both sides. So if you're having a leak on the passenger side and not your driver's side, I would continue to repair both sides anyway. People have different complaints, but they all seem to be the same body seam issues. So if you don't have the problem now, you might have it later. And as soon as water gets into the cab of a vehicle, it's a pain to take care of, as I'm sure you know since you're here watching this video. And if you want to know how we take care of water and mold issues on the inside of a vehicle, you can watch our mold remediation video linked in the description below. If you can get around not taking off the fender, not getting behind the fuse panel, you don't have to go to the level that I went to. I took off both the fender and undid a bunch of wiring to the fuse box and took off the firewall cover on the inside of the vehicle. And that was a lot of work that I needed to do to find the leak, but if this is the leak you're experiencing, you don't have to do these things. The fender was easy to take off, fuse box wiring not so much. The wiring can be very difficult to put back where it goes. It's probably still a good idea to cut out that piece of foam that covers the firewall so that you can let it dry, because it was literally dripping with water. We are going to put the technical service bulletins that detail where these leaks are happening most often and the 3 areas that I took care of. So this first service bulletin is labeled an A-pillar water leak, and it means that the water is going into the A-pillar where it's not supposed to go. But there is a trim piece that they call the wiper cowl trim that gets dry rotted and broken. It's very important that those wiper cowl trim pieces are actually doing their job and that they're not broken. This is supposed to redirect it to the gutter where the water is supposed to go. So we will link this part in the description. If you're having water enter the vehicle and your trim pieces need to be replaced, I would suggest that you replace the trim pieces and follow some of these procedures to mitigate the water going where it's not supposed to go. They didn't put seam sealer inside the pillar, and that causes water to enter the vehicle. And the bulletin details filling the pillar with foam. I just used the Great Stuff. I looked into the froth pack that they say to use, and it's the Great Stuff brand. So I just used a standard Great Stuff foam, and I filled both sides. In the technical service bulletin, they don't care where the water is coming in. They don't care if it's coming in on the passenger or the driver's side. They want you to fill both sides because it's a problem. I found this bulletin at the end of all my research. It's probably the first thing you should do. The water shouldn't be going there. It's not prepared for water to go there. So that's the first one. The second one is inside the gutter system, just underneath the wipers. They call it the load beam cowl. It is the gutter where the water is supposed to go. In the bulletin, they detail looking for what they call skips or holes and you can see in the video that the seam sealer just doesn't go all the way, and it's on both sides because the gutter doesn't flow off. It doesn't have a steep enough flow that the water just sits there. It ends up where those seams are. So it's very difficult to know where water is getting in, but I ended up just covering both of those areas with seam sealer, and I saw a noticeable stop to the leak. Before, you could see water trickling in, and then after, it wasn't as bad, but I was still getting some damp seepage. Something that I did on the driver's side that I didn't do on the passenger side was putting more seam sealer in the same area where the load beam wiper cowl leak is, where the seam sealer just comes in a line. I came from the bottom and added more, because I thought that that would fix the seeping on the inside that was actually coming from the pillar. Do I think it was helpful? Probably. I basically made it easier for the water to run down, but I don't know that it actually fixed any leaking or that it was necessary. The very last leak that or what I believe is a leak, this doesn't have a technical service bulletin behind it. You can see when you take the wheel well cover off that in a corner, the seam sealer stops and starts, and there's a gap in between. Water ends up collecting there because it doesn't have enough of a smooth runoff. So this was actually the first repair that I made. Didn't fix the leak and didn't fix the streaming that was coming in on the inside, but I think that it's probably still an issue. It could lead to water getting in the cab. The fact that water isn't supposed to go there meant that they did not seal it correctly. I recommend that that is one of the repairs you make since you're already in there. I did put seam sealer on the inside of the cab. It was like last ditch effort kind of thing. Like, I can't keep the water from coming inside, so I'm just going to try to block it, but it never works that way. If you're wanting to just verify that that's where your leak is happening, the easiest place to do that is going to be on the passenger side. There's a little bit of wiring to take apart, and you're going to have to cut the foam out, which you should maybe do anyway for the mold remediation. But the driver's side is much more difficult. It's much more of a project. If you don't have to do it, I wouldn't do it. That is the very last thing. If you found this video helpful, please consider giving it a like or subscribe, or if you know somebody who has this very common, very frustrating issue, consider sending it to them. And as always, we'll be happy to answer as many questions as we can in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in the shop.